It's 2025. Is it still worth buying a Gibson Les Paul Standard 60s? Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. The 60s Les Paul Standard was first introduced in the year 2019 as part of a rebranding for the new era of Gibson. Needless to say, this series has come a long way from its humble beginnings of just 3 finish offerings. So we'll use tonight's episode to go over all the options that you could possibly have, as well as look at the brand new one that actually has gold hardware in a sweet root beer finish. I know I'm loving this thing straight out of the case, but let's go ahead and learn about all these finish options. There are currently 7 main categories you can put a 60 Standard in. There's your regular AA tops, which is the baseline level of this model, starting around $27.99. From there, you can opt to have about a $200 premium to upgrade to a AAA top, or you can save a little bit money by going for one of the plain top versions at $25.99, or even a mahogany top version if you prefer that wooden choice. Or to save even more money, there's a faded series offering a satin finish on the top, back, and neck. And then from there, you have the cool custom color series, which at this point in time, a lot of that's starting to wrap up. Some of the colors are being discontinued, but you can still find them. And then, of course, you get the dealer exclusives. So in our regular AA category, we've got the original ones: Unburst, Bourbon Burst, and my favorite of those, Iced Tea. Note that the original Iced Tea and Bourbon Burst are the only ones available left-handed. But adding in the custom colors, you've got the 60s Cherry, Ocean Blue finish, a slick Honey Amber with a boisterous Blueberry Burst, a stunning Translucent Fuchsia, as well as a translucent Oxblood, which might look black in these photos, but if you shine a light on it, it does become red, as well as the one we're talking about today, Root Beer with the golden hardware. Then for your Gibson.com exclusives, you've got the Dark Purple Burst, Plain Top Heritage Cherry Sunburst, as well as Plain Top Bourbon Burst. There was once upon a time an olive drab gloss, but that has now been discontinued, but you might still be able to find one somewhere. But then there's the solid colored 60 Standards featuring natural backs on most of them, starting with Cardinal Red, Pelham Blue, a striking classic white, Inverness Green, sparkling burgundy, and deep purple, with an ebony finish, but then also an ebony finish. What's the difference? Well, this ebony has an ebony back, whereas this ebony is a natural back. Personally, I prefer that one. And then this is exactly why I make this video every year, because I didn't even know there was a Gibson exclusive dark walnut version. I had forgotten about this one. That's an attractive guitar, if you like 70s boring brown anyway. But then there's the faded series that we were talking about in Vintage Bourbon Burst, as well as Vintage Cherry Sunburst. And then the mahogany top is only offered at dealers in a TV yellow hue, but there is a Gibson.com exclusive Vintage Cherry offered. And then from here, we can go to the dealer exclusives. So AMS actually offers quilt tops at a huge premium, $30.99, that are available in Honey Burst, as well as my favorite custom color, the Ocean Water finish. It can vary top to top, example to example, but some of these become incredibly gorgeous. Chicago Music Exchange has a variant on Cherry Sunburst called Tomato Soup Burst. Then Sweetwater has a whole slew of them. So here's Heritage Cherry Sunburst. The difference between this one and Gibson.com appears to be the AAA top offering, but they also have the exclusive Viper Blue finish with the natural back, as well as a Lemon Burst offering with a red back. And then Sweetwater also has an exclusive one with Sugar Bucker pickups. Now, if you're curious how those sound, we did document a Les Paul custom that somebody put those pickups in, but that's offered in the Dirty Lemon Burst finish, as well as Tobacco Sunburst. But it's important to note those ones are sold at a premium. Guitar Center has something that they call Tri-Burst, which you might remember from the early 2000s Gibson Custom Shop. Basically, regular Cherry Sunburst with a black border. But here's another one I didn't realize existed. I mean, these are all just variations on bursts, so they kind of all blend in your head, but this one's called Honey Lemon, and you can get that both in a AAA top as well as your regular AA. But speaking of exclusive pickups in the exclusive finishes, Wildwood Guitars has a different categorization that they call Custom Shop Top rather than AAA, that also come with their exclusive 59 Tribute humbuckers. You can check them out in this episode when we did it. But the 60 Standards come in a Bourbon Burst, a Lemon Burst, and finally another Bourbon Burst. So needless to say, there is a boatload of options. Some might even argue too many options in the 2025 market, and that's why we're seeing some of them get discontinued. But due to that phenomenon, there has not been a better time to buy one of these. Because if that general range of $22.99 all the way up to $3,100 is just too much for you, my goodness, the Gibson Demo Shop is your best friend. Currently, there's 37 different 60 standards available, ranging from the AA's that aren't that nice to a pretty nice AAA top over here in an Ocean Water Perimeter AMS exclusive, you can get quite considerable savings. And that also makes the used market very competitive when you're selling one that's not a brand new finish that just came out. So when this series first launched at $24.99 and then slowly crept up, a lot of people were like, is it even worth it anymore? We're finally starting to see them come back down to their initial prices as well as below that. Because quite frankly, we finally reached the point where there's enough supply to satiate the demand and more. Oh, and that's just the 60s Les Paul Standard. We didn't even talk about the 50s because they get some slightly different color options as well as other dealer exclusives. But if I missed anything, feel free to chime in the comments section. That's what they're there for. There's too many to keep track. But this new 60s root beer, I believe it launched late 2024 alongside a 50s transparent black Les Paul as well as a 50s P90 ebony version. But the biggest claim to fame for this one, as I was alluding to earlier, is the fact that we have gold hardware. We have not seen this on any exclusive one yet, so it made this one a must document, even if it does have the feature that I'm not a big fan of. The black back shows all the scratches and fingerprints, etc. But that top and the gold just works perfectly. But what makes a 60 standard is A, the slim neck profile. That's why you choose one of these. B, you get the Grover style tuners instead of the Clusons. You get a slightly different pickup as compared to the 50 standard, but it's not that big of a deal. And you get the reflector knobs. So that means this one falls within the base level AA top category, but this one has a premium built onto it for the gold hardware, so it costs $28.99 brand new. But with that price, you get your regular hardshell case. Things have not really changed in the past year or two on the cases. It looks like we're still making these in Costa Rica. I know there was a period in time when it was China and a whole bunch of other places. Things are relatively stable again with the Costa Rican Gibson cases. But as far as case candy, here's what we've got. Our case keys inside this envelope. A fancy 1-ounce silica packet. Our pre-pack checklist and warranty information. Next up, a polishing cloth. This used to be labeled Gibson, didn't it? And it had a little plastic baggie. This just came bare. I wonder if that is a new upcoming change. We still have the basic Gibson strap. I'd like to see these things get discontinued or at least changed up because I'm not a big fan of them. We've got our Gibson app advertisement. I'm kind of shocked they still give us the blank truss rod cover. And would you look at this? We still get the Gibson multi-tool, which I am a fan of, but again, the baggie is not here. They must be cutting down on their plastic usage. Because let's face it, the little baggie inside of the big baggie doesn't really make much sense. So as long as we keep this, we're good. And then for historical preservation, here's the original box tag for this Gibson.com exclusive. You can also get them out of the Gibson garage. And then they slice off the box tag for you as some cool case candy, which I highly suggest doing because it's a lot more practical than saving this box in your house for 20 years. So first impression, honestly, I'm blown away by this one. I think it's gorgeous and it stands out so much more from all those other colors. I mean, maybe it's similar to the walnut one, but the gold hardware is just a breath of fresh air. And I really like the streaky rosewood fretboard that this one has, especially up here. It matches perfectly with that finish. So to learn more about this one and check 2025 quality control, let's go ahead and throw this one onto the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Let's just say, that's definitely a pick guard off example. But while tearing this apart, I realized why this was such an attractive new release. It reminds me of the 90s custom color series and some of the early 90s Les Paul standards in general, because there were many of them that came with gold hardware, so it's cool to see a return to form in that sense. In fact, they even had kind of a mocha one, but I would say what we're documenting today is a little prettier than that, depending on what types of woods you prefer. But let's check out our pickups. It's just your regular Burstbucker 61 rhythm neck and the lead 61 in the bridge. But within the circuit, that bridge reads 7.93 k ohms, neck position 788, and the middle for fun 395. I think I remember this from last year. The pickup lead lengths are ridiculously long on these. They could certainly shorten those up if they wanted to. But it's nice because if you end up swapping these out, you can put them into anything almost. Here's our neck pickup cavity. It's still short neck tenon, and you can see that maple top joining onto our non-weight relieved mahogany body. And RO, is this a 1960 reissue? Did I get a custom shop for USA pricing? No, that's your color code. If you're wondering why it's not RB, you gotta remember RB might stand for something else within their ecosystem, so RO is for Rootbeer. And then down here we have LPS for Les Paul Standard, 6 for 60s, and then this is a late 2024 model. But I've got to say, they have cleaned up these routes pretty nicely. If we want to get nitpicky, there's a little bit of flaking of the edges over here. But based on this random spot sample check, I would say that they are putting a little bit more care into that. Even if that's not just company policy, that just might be somebody who's working this department and agrees with us and says, yeah, I'll take a quick second to clean those up. But now bridge and tailpiece time. They're still utilizing a regular Gibson ABR1. This time it's just gold. However, Gibson USA still utilizes the Nashville style studs. So ABR1 bridge, just not mounted historically. Kind of a best of both worlds thing. And it's important to note, you actually have adjustment to your thumb wheel utilizing an Allen wrench right there. You can also use the thumb wheels like usual, but if I remember correctly, that's something that started like 3 or so years ago for Gibson USA. That was not there at launch. But we do have a lightweight tailpiece, also in gold by API. And no fanciness on these guys. I gotta go to the modern series for that. It's just 2 volumes, 2 tones. And you get your pointers on the knobs as well. But now the pickguard area. Does it have the usual impression? I was shocked. I do not see it. This one's actually in good shape if you wanted to take your pickguard off. Outside of your screw holes and what looks like a flattening finish spot due to where the pickguard sat on it. If you're confused what I'm talking about, the bracket screw on your pickguard, sometimes that nut will touch and cause an indentation into the top. So after about a year of the original collection, they started to put these felt pads. But the felt pad itself can also react to the nitro. But man, this one just looks good no matter what you do. I love the choice of the cream plastics. They could have went for black and then, yeah, you'd be accenting the dark parts of the flame. But with the cream binding, I think they made the right choice. Which, by the way, if you missed it, on those hog tops, they actually do have black binding. But we'll just take a second to appreciate our finish. The root beer is very interesting. Like, depending on how you view it, you see a lot more flame down here. But the whole darkness and lightness, I suppose there will be some variations within this because some finishes are darker than others naturally. So if you wanted one that was darker, you might be able to find it. That's why I always suggest going like with the Gibson Garage when you're buying a .com exclusive, because at least they can send you photos, so it's not a complete crapshoot of what might show up at your door. So here's your side profile shot with your black back exposed. But moving on from our body, we've got that mahogany neck with a rosewood fretboard. I already told you I love the streakiness of this particular one, but you've got your acrylic trapezoid inlays. And here's something I would love to see Gibson improve upon. All I did down here was condition the fretboard. Here's the shininess of the frets from the factory. Honestly, not even shiny at all. Here's the frets from a Fender made in Japan guitar straight out of the gig bag. Those are nice. And before you tell me, oh, it's just that style of fret wire, I did 3 different polishing tests up here. So this is your stock fret wire, nothing touched. This is polished with a Dremel. This is polished with steel wool. This is steel wool followed up by one of those paper polishers. You can see Gibson could get the same results if they wanted to. And if they want to start differentiating themselves from the used market, I would love to see them step up their fret game and start doing this before they leave the door. Now, the downside to that being people will start to complain that their fingers turn black because that's just part of the fret polishing. You really got to rub those things down. But my thought process is it's a brand new guitar. It should have crazy shiny frets and be nice and sparkly. And in theory, that all sounds good, but you got to remember, they whip up these fretboards way in advance. They look like this, and they already have the frets in them. So just because the guitar's new doesn't mean your frets were just put in. Who knows how long some of that inventory sticks around. But after they install it, then they do the plec machine to level the frets, etc. That's always cool to see things like this in its raw form. This is the Les Paul new old stock fretboard from the 70s. But that's something you might consider doing because it'll make your strings last longer and your frets last longer, and it just plays a little bit nicer. And conditioning the board straight out of the box is always a must. But 1.69 inch nut width, that increases to 2.08 by the 12th. Pretty skinny, 0.79 first fret neck depth, and only 0.89 by the 12th. The 60s neck is one of the most popular sellers for Gibson. It's not like super ultra blade thin. It's got a little bit of roundedness to it, but it's definitely on the thinner side. Here's a look at that neck profile on the contour gauge. First fret and 12th fret. Stays a very consistent shape, just gets a bit wider up top. But it still has the 12-inch fretboard radius and 24 3/4-inch scale. Then as far as nitty-gritty details really getting in their face as far as tooling marks, etc., honestly, this is one of the best ones I've seen in recent memory. I don't see a whole lot of marks at all. But remember, that doesn't mean they're all perfect. This is just a random spot check sample. The only thing I see in this lighting is maybe a little bit of tooling there. In my opinion, the worst cosmetic thing on this one is actually at the very end of the fretboard. You can see where the two binding strips meet this bottom one. Some sort of a die or something really got into that seam line to make it ultra obvious. Same thing is true over here, a very visible line. Now when you're playing it and your pickup's installed, you don't really notice that one, but that one does catch your eye just a little bit. Now our headstock, something about those golden Grovers, it just completely transforms the look of this thing. Like even the headstock shape just looks ever so slightly different. But you have the Gibson Mother of Pearl logo with Les Paul metal silkscreen. Then here's our truss rod underneath our cover. Everything looks good there. And the stock one on the guitar reads standard and is 2-ply. Oh, and all the screws used on this guitar are also gold. Moving on to the backside, I suppose an argument you could make for the ebony back is the fact that it just kind of looks like a black beauty. Because you've got the golden screws, golden tuners, as well as your golden large strap buttons. Still a plastic output jack plate though. And then you can just barely see the binding poking through. But as far as the electronics, everything has stayed consistent in these over the years. Gibson branded pots with orange drop capacitors. And once again, some pretty clean routes. And here's a look at our black back plate. Thin binding in the cutaway, not that you get to appreciate it on a black back model though. And we can look at the other side too, just for the sake of completeness. Moving up the back side of the neck, as I was telling you, it's going to show the smallest fingerprints as well as scratches just by touching it and dust, and that's why I don't like the ebony finish. But if you're a player, you probably don't care about stuff like that. But as I was coming up on the neck, the light caught my attention dancing over the back. There's actually some contaminations within our finish. We've got an unevenness right here. There's another one in this area with another two right around here. Here's another rather large one right here. Maybe a few light scuffs down here. That's another reason why I don't like complete solid back color finishes, because occasionally you'll find stuff like that. Now, is that ever apparent, noticeable at every angle? No. It took me being in this direct viewing with the light in that situation to notice. But we definitely do have a few dimples. But our serial number dates this one to the 288th day of 2024. Initial batch, production number 163. You can see your Made in USA stamp as well as the outlines of the stamper itself impressed into the wood. But all said and done, this one weighs 9 pounds, 4.9 ounces. Generally, they range between 8.5 and 10.5, so you can shop around for the lightest or heaviest example. But overall, how did they do on QC? Few things on the back, minor things with the fretboard. I would say things are about the same as far as the nitty-gritty details. But let's go ahead and hear if the gold hardware changes the tone. So far, I'd say those tones are nice. Good bite out of your bridge. In fact, I would say that is an excellent sounding bridge pickup, not just nice. Now we'll try our neck. know about you guys, but I think this thing sounds fantastic. I've demoed a lot of 50s and 60s standards, but something about the color scheme and the tones out of this one's just really inspired me to play a little bit differently. As well as all the usual stuff. Okay, so I noticed a few things. These are unpotted pickups, so if you're trying to play with high gain, they're going to squeal. This particular set is even more sensitive than usual. I found myself just running them at about 8.5 for most of the demo. Otherwise, it just really starts to squeal. If you have it like within 12 feet of your amp. There we go, the new Gibson 60s Les Paul Standard in the Rootbeer burst with the gold hardware option and black back. What are my final thoughts on this one? Cosmetically, I think this one is within the top 3 of all the 60 standards, because those AMS exclusive quilt top ones are really good. So I'd probably put the blue version of that alongside this Rootbeer, and I think that classic iced tea is always a great color. But to answer our question, is it worth buying one of these in 2025? I still think these are the best modern day Les Pauls that we've had in a long time. However, we've had them for like a good 6 years now, so it's almost to the point where we can't even say that anymore. It's just Gibson Les Paul Standards are great guitars. Now, are there better values out there with other brands that you don't have to spend nearly $3,000 for? Sure, you can start comparing everything to everything, and yeah, then you just get crazy. But if you're after a Gibson Les Paul, yeah, they're still making these things good. If I needed a player, I would not be selling this guitar. It just inspired me to play so much. I don't know if it has to do with the coloring, the gold hardware, or maybe I'm just in a particular mood to play guitar today, but this one is a fantastic little piece. So I hope you found this video helpful in at least discovering all the different options that you do have out there, from the used market to the demo shop and all the colors that you could hunt down in between. But all right, if you're interested in being the next owner of this demo unit, you can find it for sale on my website, troglysguitarshow.com. Otherwise, we'll catch you guys tomorrow on the next one. Take care.